Thank you for watching Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir. I am thankful to all news resources. Following are the news which have been reported by American, Canadian, African, Asian, Australian, and European channels. News agencies, writers, AFP, AP have also reported the same news. Now the headlines. Aid bill for Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan, and Palestinian has been passed in US Congress. Now it will go to Senate. Elections in India have started and they will continue for next 6 weeks. Turkish leader met Palestinian leader. Israeli assault on Gaza continued. More than 7 people died yesterday. An explosion in Iraq. Volkswagen workers got union in Tennessee, southern US. Blinken will visit China. Taylor Swift new album. X refuses to politicians. Now the news in detail.
Tonight, a massive aid package approved with huge implications for the wars in Ukraine and Gaza.
The bill was passed.
A dramatic day as U.S. lawmakers pushed through $95 billion in foreign aid.
Ukraine is fighting for its life every day against Vladimir Putin.
Calls to de-escalate tensions in the Middle East as a Canadian aid truck is bombed in Gaza.
How do we ensure this never happens again?
A chatbot you can't avoid.
This is essentially being forced on billions of users, and they have no way out.
Concerns over Meta's new feature users can talk to. Plus, a fascinating fossil find by a father-daughter duo.
No other marine reptiles got as large as these animals did.
Uncovering the jawbone of a gigantic prehistoric sea creature.
That's just exceptional fun.
CTV National News with Heather Butts.
Good evening. Some of the world's most volatile conflict zones are getting billions of dollars in new aid from the U.S. tonight. A rare Saturday session had lawmakers on both sides of the aisle coming together to approve almost $100 billion for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. CTV's Tony Grace reports.
On this vote, the ayes are 311 and the nays are 112. The bill is passed.
An overwhelming and emotional vote.
Flag waving on the floor is not appropriate.
But it breaks a months-long deadlock, greenlighting $61 billion in U.S. aid for war-torn Ukraine.
We are the leader of the free world. It requires us to lead.
Republicans were split.
We should be funding to build up our weapons and ammunition, not to send it over to foreign countries to kill foreign people.
But didn't have the numbers to stop it. $95 billion approved altogether. The $61 billion for Ukraine includes $23 billion to replenish U.S. weapons, stocks, and facilities. There's also $26 billion for Israel, with $9 billion of that earmarked for humanitarian needs, and $8 billion for the Indo-Pacific, including Taiwan.
It's the potential to turn the tide in Ukraine, protect our ally Israel, and deter China from attacking Taiwan.
President Joe Biden says the move advances national security and sends a clear message about American leadership on the world stage. Ukraine's president calls the aid vital, saying it will stop the war from spreading and save thousands of lives.
And now the U.S. is stepping up again, so that's tremendous good support for Ukraine.
The Ukrainian-Canadian Congress says it will have a broader impact.
It tells us that, the people who are running the governments in the West understand the importance of defending Ukraine, understand that without Ukraine, Russia will be on NATO's border.
And believes Canada could also do more, such as manufacturing munitions. Since 2022, Canada's pledged $4 billion in military aid for Ukraine. The Prime Minister discussed the broader conflict today with the President of Poland.
It's important to continue to step up and be there wherever it is needed. Your leadership on Ukraine and the way we stand together.
President Biden has promised to sign the new aid package as soon as it's passed by the Senate, and that could happen, Heather, as early as Tuesday.
Tony, thank you. And as part of that package, the Senate will also be forced to consider a potential ban on social media app TikTok, with House lawmakers tying the issue to foreign aid. It puts pressure on Senate lawmakers to vote on the whole package that would force TikTok's Chinese parent company to sell its share in the app or be banned in the U.S. Canada is keeping a close watch on the outcome. We're hearing tonight from a Canadian charity that says its key water aid truck was bombed in Gaza. The organization is urging the federal government to investigate. It comes as world leaders call for de-escalation. CTV's Colton Prale reports.
Water is a scarcity in Gaza. Humanitarian groups are working to provide basic life necessities throughout the enclave, but there are new concerns after a Canadian water truck was bombed in northern Gaza.
Reports from the field suggest that, there were Israeli tanks in the area, right? So we want to know, hey, well, did this happen intentionally?
No International Development and Relief Foundation aid workers were injured, but the organization says it's calling on Ottawa to investigate the incident.
We want to ensure that, number one, that we have that level of protection and support, at least from our government's perspective, to say, hey, look, we are going to be holding folks accountable for what's going on here.
Canada is already being urged to investigate another recent strike, a deadly Israeli bombing that killed 7 aid workers, including a Canadian citizen. Today, a funeral for one of the victims was held in Poland.
It shouldn't be that we have to put this much time into trying to ensure safety, trying to ensure that people are following international law, humanitarian law.
Earlier this month, ANERA temporarily paused aid delivery, looking for more certainty of their safety.
The question hasn't been fully answered. I don't feel fully comfortable that we're back working and that our staff are out delivering aid.
The humanitarian concern comes as international attention is focused on Iran and fears of a regional war. Experts say that looks less likely after a muted Israeli response.
I think we're seeing clearly that both sides are trying to de-escalate at this point the conflict. The problem is that they're not the only actors in the region that potentially want conflict.
A spokesperson for the Minister of International Development says Ottawa has reached out to Israel about the incident involving the water truck. Ottawa says attacks on humanitarian aid workers and operations are unacceptable. Colton Prale, CTV News, Ottawa.
Healthcare workers from across Ontario and Quebec rallied on Parliament Hill protesting the worsening humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
We see medical personnel that have been killed, ambulances, hospitals destroyed.
Dressed in scrubs and spattered with red paint, they laid on the ground as a symbol of those who've been killed in the war. Carrying signs, protesters then marched through the city. The massive fire that sparked a state of emergency in a Labrador town is now under control. The cause is still unclear, with investigators in Happy Valley Goose Bay unable to access the site.
Given the nature of the fire and the size, there's a tremendous amount of heat still in the old hangar, so I'm not really sure when they would be able to get in there safely.
Flames took hold of several buildings at the former airport in northern Labrador last night. Explosions catapulting metal debris hundreds of feet through the air. The state of emergency has been lifted, with residents allowed to return home. Firefighters and first responders are expected to remain at the scene for several days. If you use social media, you've likely noticed a new addition. Meta has created an AI chatbot for people on Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, intended to help you search. For some, it's an unwanted guest. Here's CTV's Kamal Kramali.
You may have noticed a new friend on Facebook. Problem is, you probably never invited them.
Kind of creepy.
Meet Meta's new AI assistant for Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp.
And in Canada, 45% of our citizens use WhatsApp. We're talking about a tool that has the power to shape the Canadian public discourse.
For many, this will be the first foray into the world of chatbots, here to help you from finding recipes to generating pictures, included on your social media apps, whether you like it or not.
So if you go into the settings, there's no way to turn this off. So this is essentially being forced on billions of users, and they have no way out.
It's already finding itself in some bizarre exchanges. One joined a Facebook moms group. The AI chatbot claimed it had a gifted child. It also tried to give away non-existing items in an online exchange forum, and that has social media users concerned about their privacy.
Just sort of do your best to navigate it and teach your kids how to identify it.
Some even changing their social media habits.
So are you going to stop? Yes, for sure. You're going to stop using social media, that's right.
But experts say it's nearly impossible to escape.
If you have already downloaded any of these Meta apps, you have already signed your rights away.
The information could be used to curate what you see on your homepage, help inform Meta of your online patterns, even supply it to advertisers.
So clearly, if you're using these companions to search for information that may be a bit sensitive or information you don't want getting out there, Meta will be able to mine that information.
There's also concern it could be used as a new tool for hackers.
I would be pretty shocked if we don't see sort of social engineering scams at some degree of scale sort of based on this technology.
In a statement, Meta wouldn't say exactly how that information is used, just that this is new technology and it's working on improving those features. Heather.
Kamal Kramali in Toronto. Canadians with disabilities are sharing their disappointment after the government announced funding for a new benefit meant to help pull them out of poverty. But advocates say the individual payments are far from beneficial. CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver explains.
A new disability benefit promised to lift hundreds of thousands of Canadians with disabilities out of poverty. But potential recipients like John Reddins are skeptical it will make a dent.
It won't benefit me at all. It's a day-to-day struggle. What can be paid and what can't be paid. Lucky I live in an affordable apartment, but it's not subsidized. I pay market rent like everyone else.
The federal budget allocated $6.1 billion over 6 years to the Canada Disability Benefit that will be distributed by CRA. The maximum payment, though, just $200 a month, or $2,400 a year, and it only applies to people 18 to 64.
I think there's always more to do, but I will say, if you look at the budget, this is the largest single item that you will see.
Ottawa is calling this a major milestone that will bring people above the poverty line. Advocates say the benefit alone isn't likely to do that.
Most disabled people in this country get 30% below that poverty line, or almost $1,000 less, and living with a disability costs more. So in fact, disabled people are not even lifted out of poverty if we just reach the official poverty line.
Thousands of people with disabilities who are straddling that line use the Daily Bread Food Bank.
They were already with us before the pandemic, and they were with us during the pandemic, and sadly they're going to be with us after.
CEO Neil Harrington hopes the government is truly committed to improving the benefit.
We will work with the government to say how can we, as step 2, move that needle forward so that nobody needs to have to rely on friends, family, and charity in order to get their most basic needs fulfilled.
Applications for the new benefit will open in the coming months, with the first payments expected to go out in July 2025. Annie Bergeron-Oliver, CTV News, Ottawa.
A New Brunswick man wrongfully convicted of murder has died just months after being exonerated. Walter Gillespie served 21 years in prison after he and friend Robert Mailman were convicted of murder in 1984. The men were eventually released on parole. The co-president of Innocence Canada, who took up their legal fight, says the pair spent 4 decades fighting to clear their names.
It was quite a weight lifted off of their shoulders. Unfortunately, Mr. Mailman has serious health issues, and Mr. Gillespie was 80 years old. So we knew that they weren't going to get to enjoy the type of freedom for very long. We hoped it would have been longer.
Innocence Canada says Gillespie died in his home in St. John, New Brunswick. As companies switch to online services, some brick-and-mortar banks are now closing, a challenge impacting many who rely on in-person support. CTV Sarah Plowman on the small-town pain in a digital age.
You've got the best deals on delicious food. Order now.
In Macadam, New Brunswick, tradition moves through town, and how people pick up their mail or money. But the only bank is leaving.
So we will miss it.
Disrupting the lives of seniors like 91-year-old Joy Kneebone and her husband Terry, who can't bank online.
We're illiterate when it comes to what these young people can do.
Joy's eyes aren't what they used to be, so Terry drives. The closest branch is an hour away.
They're always saying how they're trying to help the elderly stay in their own home and help the elderly do this and that, and then turn around and make it very difficult for us.
Scotiabank plans to close more than 24 branches across Canada. It calls the decision difficult, saying with customers' preferences changing and more day-to-day banking being done digitally, we continue to evolve. McAdams Mayor is seeking a compromise, like an ATM.
That people then can go and at least get cash, or they can make a deposit. So those discussions are ongoing.
Nakawick will also lose its only bank in June.
The scales have tipped away from the customer and towards the shareholder, and they've made their decision and they're not going to back down. So
there's talk of opening a credit union, but that would take time and money. For some, the change makes banking inconvenient and more expensive. It costs a drive to the next closest branch. From where I am, it's 40 minutes. Business owners who rely on the service daily are frustrated.
I can't do my deposit online.
For some, the local branch wasn't just a business.
We walk in and they say, "Good morning, Joy. How are you?" How nice is that?
A comfort she's about to lose.
Unless they reconsider and have heart and realize that it is a necessary thing for us.
Feedback from one longtime customer. Sarah Plowman, CTV News, McAdam, New Brunswick.
Coming up, breaking the all-time attendance record for women's hockey. Drawing a capacity crowd at Montreal's Bell Centre. Plus, preparing for Earth Day with the cleanup capabilities of an inspiring teenager. The Professional Women's Hockey League has scored big in its first season. Today's game in Montreal at the biggest hockey arena in North America shattered another attendance record. Here's CTV's Olivia O'Malley.
This is the sound of history being made. 21,105 fans filled the Bell Centre to capacity to see Montreal's PWHL team take on Toronto.
We want the world to see that we'll pay to come see an event. We can fill an arena this size.
Not only will they pay, but many people traveled hours to be here. This group from Toronto saw the previous record-breaking game at Scotiabank Arena.
We had to come here.
And these women drove from Nova Scotia, spending 12 hours in the car.
It's a super overwhelming feeling as a female growing up playing hockey in Newfoundland, Cornwall, Newfoundland. Where our hockey team is 12 to 21, and we're at the Montreal Canadiens Arena in a sold-out for a PWHL game. That's huge.
Fans had to act fast to be here. Tickets to watch the game at the largest hockey arena in North America sold out in a matter of minutes.
It's amazing. I remember when I used to see games before, we were maybe 100, and now this is crazy. I wasn't expecting this.
I'm really excited because it's my first time and I love hockey.
When both teams were introduced, yes, even a Toronto team in Montreal, the crowd went wild. Players say it was pretty emotional.
It was surreal. When I kind of stepped on the ice when we first got introduced, the whole team, my jaw was on the floor.
The support everywhere has been incredible. I never dreamed of playing at the Bell Centre, but that was one of the best experiences that I've ever had.
Memorable for players and fans, including Jacques Sylvestre.
It's a special day, very special day.
He's passing his love of the game onto his granddaughters.
It's the first time with the 4 women of my life. My granddaughter, my wife, and my daughter.
Players and fans say they want to continue to promote women's hockey so they can play in front of crowds this size on a consistent basis, and record-breaking games will take place regularly. Olivia O'Malley, CTV News, Montreal.
Women's wheelchair basketball is also shining bright for Canada, punching a ticket to Paris this summer. Dominating the competition, they secured a spot at the 2024 Paralympic Games. Still ahead, a fascinating beach find. The bones of an ocean titan identified as a new species. British scientists are getting a good glimpse at an ancient creature that lived around 200 million years ago. A father and daughter discovered the massive jawbone belonging to what's likely the largest marine reptile. Here's CTV's Alison Bamford on the jaw-dropping discovery.
No other marine reptiles got as large as these animals did.
Illustrations show a giant Ichthyotitan severnensis, a prehistoric marine reptile that lived more than 200 million years ago.
Oh, that's just an exceptional find.
Now more proof of the animal that paleontologists consider to be a new species of ichthyosaur, also known as fish lizards. 11-year-old Ruby Reynolds and her dad Justin spotted a piece of jawbone fossil along a British beach in 2020, the same type of bone found by another fossil collector a few years earlier.
Based on that unique shape, various different structures, the fact that they're both right from the end of the Triassic period, about 202 million years ago, supports our identification of something entirely new to science.
The extremely rare finds are now documented in a new publication, suggesting the Ichthyotitan lived 13 million years after any other known ichthyosaurs, and the monstrous animal likely survived until global mass extinction that doomed several other species at the end of the Triassic period.
It's quite remarkable to think that gigantic blue whale-sized ichthyosaurs were swimming in the oceans around the time the dinosaurs were walking on land in what is now the UK.
Only the reptile's jawbones have ever been unearthed, but researchers determined its appearance based on its family members, including a species from British Columbia. Scientists hope to one day complete the massive puzzle and find an entire skeleton, or at least the skull. Alison Bamford, CTV News, Regina.
Well, also extremely rare is winning the lottery, but for some people in Ontario, it'll soon become a reality. Several winning tickets for last night's Lotto Max were sold in the province, including one for the $70 million jackpot sold in Toronto. Check those tickets. After the break, from a basement business to an industrial park, the young Canadian working to help divert waste from landfills. We leave you tonight with a little inspiration as we near Earth Day. A young Newfoundland man wanted to help divert waste from landfills. Now he has a booming recycling business. Here's CTV's Garrett Berry.
Another day, another delivery to 15-year-old Ryan Easton's industrial yard. Today, some broken and discarded washers for a few bucks. He'll take these appliances, strip them down, and sell off the steel and copper wiring that he finds inside.
I find it interesting taking apart the
appliances, figuring out how they work and that.
Each delivery is a little bit more diverted from Canada's landfills.
And from last August to the end of December, we did about 200,000 pounds of scrap steel.
It's a hobby that Ryan started 3 years ago in his parents' basement that's now grown into a business in an industrial park near St. John's.
Watching some videos about people doing it, like recycling stuff, and I found it pretty interesting and decided to start it myself.
3 years ago, I was having a fit because he was, like most kids, on screens in the basement. Mom be saying, okay, try and get him to do stuff, and now he's gone full circle, and seems like there's no stopping him. And
his new lot stores cars, TVs, snowblowers, thousands of pounds of steel waiting to be processed. This weekend, heading into Earth Day on Monday, it's his biggest of the year. An annual event brings computers, printers, and cell phones through these doors.
Last year we had a whole dumpster load, 12 cubic yards of stuff, and this year we're hoping to do a lot more than that.
It's become a pretty time-consuming after-school job. Ryan says he's got no interest in slowing down, him or his father.
I'm going 7 days a week now. Even the guy I work with said I should come back to work and get a break.
Gary Perry, CTV News, now Pro.
That's our show for this Saturday night. I'm Heather Butts. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Good night, and I'll see you again tomorrow.
Tonight, done deal after a tortured journey. House lawmakers finally vote to send billions of dollars in foreign aid to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. But what's the cost to Speaker Mike Johnson?
You do the right thing and you let the chips fall where they may.
Also tonight, tensions simmer between Iran and Israel as Israel launches new strikes on Gaza.
I'm Deborah Patter in Jerusalem. The war in Gaza has reached a grim new milestone, 34,000 dead, mostly women and children.
Trump stumps, stepping away from the courtroom to cash in on the campaign trail. Plus, historic win. Volkswagen workers accelerate the UAW's push to organize the South.
Volkswagen family, welcome to the UAW family.
Columbine, 25 years later, a victim's father reflects on the legacy of his lost son.
After Columbine, they wrote to us and said that we've received a number of donations in Daniel's name.
Weekend washout, Texas gets drenched. And later, peacocks run amok. How a Florida community is turning to the scalpel to trim the out-of-control population.
This is the CBS Weekend News from Washington with Adriana Diaz.
I'm Nancy Cordes. Adriana is off. Tonight, after 6 months of wrangling, the House has passed $95 billion in aid for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. It now heads to the Senate. The holdup was the funding for Ukraine, which the White House says is crucial to help that country repel the ongoing Russian invasion. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky expressed his thanks to Congress on social media today. Fewer than half of all House Republicans, though, voted for that funding, and now some of them are threatening to oust one of their own, House Speaker Mike Johnson, for allowing that vote in the first place. Natalie Brand has been covering all of it on Capitol Hill and joins us now. Good evening, Natalie.
Good evening, Nancy. These 3 foreign aid bills passed with rare bipartisan support. Speaker Johnson, calling the world a tinderbox, said it demands American leadership. But now his leadership is being challenged by some Republican rebels.
Cheers and a show of support for Ukraine as $60 billion in foreign aid for the war-torn country finally cleared the U.S. House after months of Republican opposition and gridlock. It's part of a $95 billion package with separate bills also passing for Israel and Taiwan.
How about Ukrainians?
Ukrainians demonstrating outside the Capitol cheered for the critically needed assistance.
Every day costs lives. Costs lives of my friends, of my classmates, of my schoolmates.
Congressman Adam Smith, ranking Democrat on the Armed Services Committee, believes passage means Ukraine has a chance to survive.
Ukraine's being outgunned like 10-1 in terms of ammunition. If we do get the support to them, most of the military experts that I have spoken to believe that Ukraine will be able to hold that line.
It's an issue that's further divided a fractured Republican Party, with more GOP members voting against Ukraine aid than for it.
Nothing is done to secure our border or reduce our debt.
That could cost Speaker Mike Johnson, with Marjorie Taylor Greene and 2 others, including Kentucky's Thomas Massie, threatening to try and oust him.
Do you have a timeline on when you would like to?
We'd like him to resign today. He should resign.
Speaker Johnson said today he's not worried about losing his job.
I have to do my job. We did. I've done here what I believe to be the right thing and let the chips fall where they may.
A 4th foreign policy bill that passed today paves the way for a possible ban of TikTok if Chinese-based ByteDance doesn't sell its stake, Nancy.
And that bill could be heading to the president's desk soon. Natalie Brand, thank you. Today's congressional action includes $26 billion in aid to Israel, some of which will be used to support defense systems that repelled recent attacks from Iran. CBS's Deborah Patta has the latest now from Jerusalem.
Good evening. For now, at least, security experts here believe Tehran will not respond to Israel's retaliatory strike, but it has diverted attention from the war in Gaza, which reached a grim new milestone, more than 34,000 dead.
The frantic rush to save the injured after yet another Israeli airstrike in Rafah. Health workers do their best, but for this little girl, it is too late. Her father is inconsolable, pressing her tight against his chest one last time. The days grind on, the death toll mounts. In this room, it is only the bodies of children. We have been here so many times in this nearly 7-month-long war. Every day, more names added to a growing list of horror. Trauma and grief play out on a never-ending loop. Shell-shocked residents standing in the ruins of their decimated homes. Children trying to salvage what they can from the rubble. Looking for something familiar. For more than 2 months, Israel has threatened to send troops into Rafah, but even without such an operation, it is under regular bombardment. The strikes come at night, they come during the day. Sometimes there's a warning from the Israel Defense Force just before a hit. These residents are on the move, carrying backpacks and flour after being told to leave just this afternoon. They're going to strike at 3:40. It's happening, shouts a man. Minutes later, it's done. In this makeshift kindergarten, teachers provide a welcome relief from the war. More than half of Gaza's 2.3 million Palestinians are sheltering in Rafah. It was supposed to be their last stop.
Despite the tensions this week with Iran, the G7 meeting, which wrapped up in Italy yesterday, is keeping the pressure on Israel, warning that a full-scale operation in Rafah, Nancy, would have catastrophic consequences.
Devastating pictures. Deborah Pata, thank you so much. Tonight, former President Trump is on the campaign trail in North Carolina after spending the week attending his criminal trial in New York. CBS's Bradley Blackburn is outside the court with more. Bradley.
Nancy, we are now used to seeing images of former President Trump in court, but what is set to happen here Monday is historic. The first time a former president will sit in front of a jury of his peers in a criminal trial. With jury selection finalized, former President Trump is bracing for a historic day in court.
Well, the judge wants this to go as fast as possible. That's for his reasons, not for my reasons.
Trump's attorneys had again tried to delay the trial and move it out of New York City, but Friday an appeals court judge denied that latest effort. Trump will face criminal charges of falsifying business records about alleged hush money payments to adult film actress Stormy Daniels. The jury that will decide the case includes a teacher, an investment banker, and a corporate lawyer.
This jury is going to be in a fishbowl under a microscope.
Legal analyst Jessica Levinson says opening statements could last days.
It sets the scene for the trial. It sets the tone. It lets the jurors know where you're going to go.
The drama in court was eclipsed briefly Friday in a park outside. A 37-year-old man doused himself with accelerant and set himself on fire. He later died in a hospital.
We do not believe this was targeting any particular person or any particular group. We just right now label it as a sort of a conspiracy theorist.
Authorities say the incident was not a threat to the trial, but they are reassessing security. The barricades are up here. Former President Trump has said he is willing to testify in his own defense, but we don't know yet what subjects he might be asked about. The judge will decide that, Nancy, on Monday.
Opening statements could go on for days. Bradley Blackburn, thank you so much. Tonight, organized labor has made new inroads in the South after a big breakthrough by the United Auto Workers. CBS's Jeff Nguyen is tracking the story for us tonight. Jeff.
Nancy, following the historic union vote, Volkswagen has acknowledged the results and thanked its employees for voting.
Auto workers at a Volkswagen assembly plant in Chattanooga, Tennessee are revved up after a historic win.
I'm about to cry. In 14 years, this is my third union drive here, and we finally got it.
Last night, they voted to join the United Auto Workers after 2 previous organizing attempts fell short. 73% of workers voting yes. That's a first in the South.
The pundits have said to me repeatedly before we announced this campaign, you can't win in the South. But you all said, watch this. You all moved the mountain.
This victory comes after large gains won by workers of the big 3 automakers.
What does this say about the perception of organized labor in America?
I think this is going to be a major boost for unions in America more generally. It is such a spectacular win that it makes it easier for the UAW to organize at the 11 remaining non-union automakers.
These UAW gains appear to be part of a renaissance moment for unions. A year ago, the so-called Summer of Labor saw Hollywood actors and writers and Las Vegas hotel workers winning big.
The next test for the UAW comes next month with workers at 2 Mercedes-Benz plants vote to unionize in Alabama. Nancy?
Jeff Nguyen, thank you. Tonight, flash flooding threatens parts of the South. Take a look at Texas, where widespread rain and thunderstorms soaked part of the state today. That's making driving treacherous on waterlogged roads. Today marks 1,200 days since the attack on the U.S. Capitol. It has led to the largest criminal probe and prosecution in U.S. history, which is still ongoing. As CBS's Scott McFarland reports, one notorious and unsettling mystery remains.
It might have been the most photographed crime in American history. But 3 years later, one particularly troubling image has yet to come into focus.
You'd like to have an answer to that question?
I'd love to have an answer, but we can't find it out so far.
The people who constructed the gallows on the west front of the Capitol on January 6th have never been identified, amid a mob chanting to hang some political leader. Eleanor Holmes Norton represents Washington, D.C. in the U.S. House.
It has special meaning in the District of Columbia because this is a black and brown city. So when you see gallows here, where in fact people in years gone by were in fact hanged, it has very special meaning.
CBS News has obtained new video showing people moving pieces into place before dawn. A new report from a congressional subcommittee says the construction began before 7 a.m. with the crossbeam and a neon orange noose added just after the rioters attacked the Capitol at 1 p.m. CBS News has learned the rope was cut and tossed down after the riot and recovered by an international journalist who turned it over to the FBI.
Started the White House Historical
Jane Campbell of the U.S. Capitol Historical Society says it's an image that is now seared into history.
The images of terror at times when our country is in its worst moments stick with us.
Though that mystery remains, the Department of Justice and the FBI have found more than 1,350 people they believe were part of the January 6th attack, with hundreds more arrests still possible. Scott McFarland, CBS News, the Capitol.
Straight ahead on the CBS Weekend News, remembering Columbine 25 years later.
Have you ever looked at an Instagram account with hundreds of thousands of followers and wondered, what are they doing that I'm not? A few years ago, I'd ask the same thing every day. Now I run an Instagram account with over 200,000 followers that teaches people like you how to grow your business on Instagram. If you're asking this question, I've just discovered a platform that I wish.
Today marks 25 years since the massacre at Columbine High School in Littleton, Colorado. It wasn't the first mass shooting at a school and far from the last, but it did send shockwaves across the nation after unfolding live on television and across the internet. At a vigil last night, family, friends, and gun safety advocates gathered to remember the victims of that awful day. One teacher and 12 students were killed. One of them was 15-year-old Daniel Mauser. Karen Morfitt of CBS Colorado spoke to Daniel's dad about the far-reaching legacy his son left behind.
Sitting in the library at Columbine High School today, his son's shoes on his feet, Tom Mauser doesn't focus on what happened 25 years ago. Instead, he reflects on the good happening inside another school, thousands of miles away.
We've been contributing to an organization called Unbound. It was a young girl in Guatemala that was benefiting from that. And after Columbine, they wrote to us and said, you know, we've received a number of donations in Daniel's name.
Roughly $77,000 was raised from those wanting to honor his son. It was enough to build a school where that little girl lived, and the Mauser family was asked to come and visit.
And then there were some buildings next door that were still under construction. Well, what's that? Well, that's the high school. We had enough money to do that also.
And then he learned of yet another building.
They had enough money to build a library in another community, given, you know, that Daniel was killed in the library at Columbine.
It would be the first in a town of 20,000 people, and the joy it brought, he says, put their own pain into perspective.
You saw the smiles on these kids' faces. You think, oh my God. What they go through every day, what they have been through. We've been through hell too. So I think.
25 years later, he's received several photos and calls from travelers who have come across that library, dedicated to his son, Daniel Mauser. Karen Morfitt, CBS News, Denver.
What a gift for that town. We'll be right back. Taylor Swift has released the first music video from her blockbuster new double album. This is Fortnite, featuring Post Malone. The Tortured Poets Department is her 11th studio album, and it is already smashing records. It was Spotify's most streamed album in a single day ever, with 313 million streams yesterday. Tonight, we're remembering a champion of Chicago's South Side, who we have followed for years here. Raydell Lacey died from cancer this week. Our Adriana Diaz first met her in 2016 when Lacey lost her grandson, EJ, to gun violence. She vowed then to turn her grief into a game-changing movement. She started Not Before My Parents, an organization that taught young Chicagoans chess and the power of using their minds to solve life's challenges.
And I don't have to beat him with these. I can beat him with this right here.
Raydell Lacey, or Nana as she was known by her loved ones, was 68 years old. Next on the CBS Weekend News, peacock problems. How a Miami suburb is curbing a skyrocketing population. Finally tonight, a Florida village overrun by peacocks is taking action to control the population. They're not killing the birds, just snipping them. Here's CBS's Christian Benavides.
All right, we could probably fit these two in.
In Pinecrest, Florida, a novel approach for a pesky predicament. Is this what you pictured?
No, I did not realize how many there were. I mean, how big of a problem.
Trapper Blake Wilkins is usually out chasing reptiles.
Similar to the iguanas, you know, the peacock population has exploded down here.
It is peacock overdrive.
Homeowner Reba Steinman says the beautiful, majestic birds act like they rule the roost.
They are an expensive nuisance.
Jumping on roofs, pecking at cars, damaging property, even stopping traffic, not to mention the noise. So many complaints, the village decided to act. The humane solution, peacock vasectomies.
You don't leave the trap there.
Wilkins' team is tasked with trapping the peacocks. Wrangling the peacocks is no easy task, but it's just the first step in the process. Then exotic animal veterinarian Don Harris takes over.
If you do a vasectomy on one male, you could stop 7, 10, 15 females from reproducing.
The entire process is less than an hour.
The victory behind all this is we are not removing the masculinity of the males. They retain their beautiful appearance, they retain their beautiful tail, they retain their dominance.
The pilot program has ruffled a few feathers. Some residents feel the birds should be left alone, even stopping some caged peacocks from reaching the operating table.
We've had birds humanely enclosed, ready for the procedures, and people have come in and released them.
Still, other cities and towns across the country are calling Dr. Harris, looking to nip and snip their own peacock problem. Christian Benavides, CBS News, Pinecrest, Florida.
Guys, taking one for the team. Well, that's the CBS Weekend News for this Saturday. First thing tomorrow, CBS Sunday Morning. And then it's Face the Nation. Margaret Brennan's guests include Governor Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania.
All right, moving along, President Biden is sounding the climate alarm to gain favor with youth and progressive voters. The White House renewing internal talks on declaring a climate emergency. As the Biden administration restricts millions of acres on Alaska's petroleum reserve from oil and gas drilling ahead of Earth Day, activists are pushing the commander-in-chief for answers, saying, quote, if Biden wants to win the youth vote, he needs to take forceful action on climate change. But would taking this action embolden our adversaries? A new Fox Nation special, Battle for the Arctic with Bill Hemmer, explores U.S. resources that could be compromised by China.
The ice-cold Arctic is a strategic hotspot. It's also home to a wealth of resources: oil, natural gas, an estimated $1 trillion worth of rare earth minerals. That makes this region a target for our competitors, like China.
Will China come here?
I think China definitely considers themselves a near-Arctic nation, and what that means to them is they reserve the right to operate in this environment. They have icebreakers, they're building more. I think that the partnerships that they have up here are not clear to me. And so I'm not sure that Russia and China are on the same page what the future of the Arctic holds.
All right, I want to get to the documentary in just a minute, but at least I want to start on a potential, climate emergency. Joe Biden trying to curry favor with younger voters. Look, there's been polling showing Trump up by 21 points with this group. Joe Biden won them by 59% in 2020. I mean, would this move the needle?
Well, if you look at it through that lens, it kind of appears that they're trying to put a lot of weight on that needle to get some movement. Look at the past couple of weeks. What has happened? Just yesterday, on Friday, Biden limited new oil and gas leasing in the Natural Petroleum Reserve, Alaska. He's talking about expanding student loan forgiveness again. He also told Bibi Netanyahu, take the win after the Iran attack. Who will these things aim to please? The younger votes, the base that is slowly slipping away from him.
Well, I mean, David, why wouldn't he do some sort of climate emergency, despite the fact that there is one? There's not one. But, I mean, look, Americans just kind of shut up and took it during COVID when the federal government and the state expanded their powers through public health emergency. So,
especially a lot of those younger people who you still see walking around, even though they're protesting and hiding their faces, in one case with masks. I see them walking around all the city, out by themselves in the parks. If you have a Pavlovian type of response from a group of people, play into it politically, and that's what he's doing. Will it work? Well, it's going to cost their parents the money, those tax dollars. We're down 43% in our SPR right now. Biden sold it or gave it away, and now it's more expensive to buy it back. This is just a scam. It's another sham by Joe Biden.
Well, it pretty much sums up his presidency so far. But, Joey, I want to get you on this Bill Hemmer documentary on the battle for the Arctic. I mean, energy security is national security, is it not?
It is, and that's why we're so concerned about how weak we are. We literally had Congress spend billions of dollars today in their justification because that was necessary for our national security. Fair enough, if that's what you're saying. The border is literally wide open. We're being invaded by China in the south. We can't afford to give up our energy independence in a way that we can't get it back. But my biggest concern is that Biden puts these things into place. I know Texas money men that are buying up solar fields left and right, not because they believe in green energy, but because they're getting so much money from it. They're getting the land for cheap, and then they build the solar field, and they sell it, and they get a lease on the land. They get what they make off the subsidies for the energy. So if the people that fund our oil and gas are giving up on it for the long term because of where the Biden administration is, we're in a bad spot. And that's the problem we have right now. The Biden policies have caused the financial backing to do oil exploration and liquid natural gas to pause or halt. And then on top of it, a bad Biden economy. If the Arctic is the next place for cheap energy and we're the last ones to get there, I mean, if it was important to put a flag on the moon, maybe it's important to drill in the Arctic.
Well, and of course, the flip side of all this is he might be trying to curry favor with, voters under 30, but it could kill him in states like Pennsylvania with voters who actually care about energy and care about their jobs as well in fossil fuels.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else. Tonight, breaking news. A rare bipartisan coalition comes together in the House, passing a massive foreign aid package. But will the Speaker pay with his job? $95 billion in funding for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. Republicans and Democrats voting in favor. What's in the bill, including the potential TikTok ban, and what that could mean for U.S.-China relations? The raucous scene on the House floor, supporters waving the Ukrainian flag, and the reaction from Ukrainian President Zelensky. The aid package now off to the Senate. Speaker Johnson putting his own job on the line, and why it may be up to Democrats to save him. Jay O'Brien on Capitol Hill breaking it all down. Overseas tensions on edge in the Middle East after Iran and Israel trade strikes. The message Israel may be trying to send, and the explosion in Iraq overnight. Who is responsible? Tom Sufi Burridge from Israel. Back here at home, millions are on alert for a flash flood threat in the south. Rounds of heavy rain and thunderstorms slamming into the Gulf Coast. Our weather team standing by. The urgent manhunt in Maryland. 5 teens shot when a senior skip day turns violent. The chaotic scene. Our team with the late-breaking developments. Disturbing video and calls for accountability. Newly released body camera footage showing Toledo police releasing a dog on a man who was then bitten during a traffic stop. The officers now under investigation, and the mistake they acknowledge on camera. What the driver is saying tonight. History made in Tennessee. Volkswagen workers vote to unionize. The first time ever at a foreign-owned auto factory in the South, where the union is hoping to go next. Taylor Swift does it again, breaking records with the release of her latest album. And America Strong tonight, the 20-year-old with a unique passion, meeting and sharing the stories of World War II veterans in the greatest generation.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us on this Saturday. I'm Wade Johnson. We begin tonight with breaking news and a rare Saturday session for the House of Representatives. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle coming together to approve a $95 billion aid package for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan after months of fierce debate. Some members of Congress cheered and waved Ukrainian flags during the passage of that bill to Ukraine. It comes at a critical time in the war against Russia. Shortly after the vote, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky thanking the House and Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu calling the passage of its aid bill much appreciated. But for House Speaker Mike Johnson, the bills could cost him his job. At least 3 GOP hardliners are threatening to oust him, potentially leaving it up to Democrats to save a Republican Speaker. The House also approving a measure that would ban the popular social media app TikTok if its China-based owner doesn't sell its stake within a year. All the bills now wrapped up into one package heading to the Senate next week. ABC's Jay O'Brien leading us off from Capitol Hill.
Tonight, with the Speaker's job on the line, the House passing a massive $95 billion foreign aid package with long-sought assistance for Israel and Ukraine. Inside the package of 4 bills, $60 billion in aid for Ukraine, $26 billion to Israel, and 8 for Taiwan. Legislation to force a sale of TikTok from its Chinese parent company also included. A major gamble by Speaker Mike Johnson, who's held up the aid for months and needed Democrats to get the legislation over the finish line, angering Republican hardliners.
Mike Johnson is a lame duck. He's done. He's done.
You do the right thing and you let the chips fall where they may.
Do you believe you will still be the Speaker come November? Yes, absolutely, without question.
Yes. 2 other Republicans now joining Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene's movement to boot Johnson from his speakership. Hardliners claiming Johnson betrayed them by not focusing on border security, despite Republicans rejecting a bipartisan border bill from the Senate after bowing to pressure from former President Trump.
What we're worried about is the signal we're sending to Americans, and to send $100 billion overseas without reinforcing our own borders.
And Democrats now signaling they're open to backing the embattled Speaker if Green makes good on her threat to call a vote for his removal.
I commended, by name, traditional conservatives, led by Speaker Mike Johnson, for doing the right thing.
Even former Speaker Nancy Pelosi telling me she's pleased with Johnson's push for Ukraine aid.
Do you think you can trust the Speaker?
But so far, it looks that way.
Overnight, Ukraine launching drone strikes against Russia, state officials say, in an attack that appeared to target the country's power grid. The last time the House approved standalone aid for Ukraine was December 2022, when Democrats still controlled the chamber. Late today, Ukraine's president thanking the House, saying the country's soldiers and citizens, quote, suffering from Russian terror will feel it.
With Majority Leader Chuck Schumer saying tonight the Senate will return early from its Passover break and start to take up this package of legislation starting Tuesday. It is expected to pass in that chamber and then head to the president's desk.
All right, Jay, and while we have you here, inside that package is a bill to force a sale of the popular social media app TikTok. What do we know about that, and what could the implications be?
Well, you'll recall the House passed similar legislation in March aimed at TikTok, but it stalled out in the Senate. Now that TikTok bill is in this foreign aid package, it means that if senators want to approve that aid for Israel and Ukraine, they would also likely have to vote for forcing a sale of TikTok away from its Chinese parent company ByteDance. And if that sale doesn't occur, then the app could be banned. TikTok saying tonight that this bill could strip the app away from 170 million U.S. users.
Something to watch and a busy weekend at the Capitol. Jay O'Brien, thank you. And tune into This Week tomorrow morning. Jonathan Karl interviews 2 key House members following the critical votes on foreign aid, Republican Mike McCall of Texas and Democrat Ro Khanna of California. We head overseas now and heightened tensions in the Middle East. Overnight, a deadly explosion at a military base in Iraq. The U.S. is denying any involvement, and Israeli military forces are not commenting. But it comes 24 hours after Israel launched a retaliatory strike against Iran. Satellite images revealing the damage to an Iranian military base. Many world leaders now urging both sides to de-escalate. ABC's Tom Sufi Burridge reporting from Tel Aviv tonight.
Tonight, an explosion at a base in Iraq amid new uncertainty in the Middle East after Israel launched a direct attack on Iran in retaliation for a barrage of Iranian missiles and drones. Iranian proxies outside of Iran facing attacks. Explosions causing a large fireball at a base near Baghdad, belonging to an Iranian-backed militia, seen in this cell phone video circulating on social media. One person killed, say Iraqi officials, with the US military denying any involvement. The IDF saying they won't comment. That attack in Iraq coming less than 24 hours after Israel's strike on Iran. Video circulating online appearing to show explosions near the Iranian city of Isfahan. A senior US official saying Israeli fighter jets firing at least 3 missiles from outside of Iranian airspace, targeting an Iranian air defense radar, protecting Iran's key Natanz nuclear facility. But that nuclear site not the target. The attack underlining that Israel has the capabilities to hit Iran's most prized assets. And today Israel saying it struck a base in Lebanon belonging to the Iranian-backed group Hezbollah. This former Israeli intelligence officer saying the aim should not be to escalate.
This is very important for Israel. We want to concentrate on Gaza. We want to finish this issue.
And today Israel continuing to strike southern Gaza. People running for cover in the city of Rafah. Cries of grief from this father. Ahmed's daughter killed, wrapped in a bloody white blanket. This is an unjust world, he says. His daughter's body in his arms.
And with tonight, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu tweeting out his thanks after the House agreed to supply more weapons to Israel.
Tom Sufi Burridge for us, thank you. Back here at home, a flash flood threat across much of the South with millions on alert for powerful storms. Heavy rain causing flooding in this neighborhood in northeast Texas and soaking rain and hail in Abilene. Let's get right to ABC's meteorologist Samara Theodore. And Samara, these storms are on the move tonight.
Yes, they are. They're moving quickly. In fact, a severe thunderstorm watch has now been issued for parts of South Carolina and North Carolina until 10 p.m., especially for hail. Now, let's time out this rain. Some of the heaviest rain is moving through Texas this evening. We can see flash flooding in this area with gusty winds. Then as we move through the overnight hours, it sweeps through Louisiana and Mississippi. By tomorrow morning, arriving in parts of central Alabama and Atlanta. Then, by tomorrow afternoon, we start to see this rain make its way into the Carolinas, bringing them even heavier rainfall. As far as totals go, some of the hot spots right now are mainly in Texas. Just north of Houston, we can see 2 to 4 plus inches of rain.
We know you'll be tracking it for us tomorrow on GMA. Samara, thank you. We turn now to a senior skip day turning violent in Maryland. At least 5 teens between the ages of 16 and 18 were injured when shots rang out during a gathering in a park. Police are now searching for the suspects. Here's ABC's Phil Lipoff.
Tonight, the search for a shooter who opened fire in a large crowd of high school students at this Maryland park. 5 teenagers shot. Those students taking part in a senior skip day, police say. Hundreds of teenagers from several schools congregating at Trome Hills Park in Greenbelt, Maryland.
The kids leave the school and they come over to the local park and they bring super soakers and other squirt guns and they have a good time playing water gun battles.
Brought a real gun and shots were fired. Police on the scene for traffic and crowd control hearing gunshots around 3 p.m.
Signal 13, shots fired, shots fired.
Terrified, those several hundred teens running in different directions to get away. Police now asking for the public's help in finding the shooter.
If a group of high school students cannot get together and have a good time, what is the world coming to?
Right now, police don't know why the shooting happened, but they do think only one person is responsible. Of the 5 teenagers shot, 3 of them have already been released from the hospital.
Some encouraging news there. Okay, Philip off. Thank you. Next tonight, body camera video of a controversial traffic stop in Ohio. Toledo officers alerted to a possible stolen vehicle, releasing a canine that bit the driver. And it turns out the truck was not stolen. What the driver is saying tonight, and we want to warn you, some viewers may find the video disturbing. ABC's Ike Jachi has more.
Tonight, disturbing police body camera video showing canine released on a man during a traffic stop in Toledo, Ohio.
Driver out of the truck.
Just last week.
They instantly came out with the guns drawn. Didn't ask me anything. Shut the truck off. Do it now.
Upchurch capturing the incident on his cell phone.
What did y'all put me over for?
Upchurch makes his way to the grass, just as the canine unit inches closer. Upchurch with his hands up.
On the ground, do it now. You're gonna get bit.
That dog biting him on the arm.
He was going for my face. Luckily, I put my arm up and he got me.
The officers handcuffing him.
Your car's stolen license plate on it. Yeah, done.
The officers then heard realizing the camera license plate reader was wrong. The car in question, a Chevy Malibu, not Upchurch's pickup truck.
What's not the stolen plate? All they had to do is run them tags again. Everybody would have went about their merry way. I need justice served because this has been going on for too long, especially in Toledo.
Whit Upchurch was booked on charges of obstruction and resisting arrest. Police maintained that they thought Upchurch was going to flee and didn't know if he or the passenger in the truck had any weapons. The Toledo Police Department is conducting an internal investigation. Whit.
Ike Jachi, thank you. Now to a historic victory for labor unions in the South. Volkswagen workers in Chattanooga, Tennessee, voting overwhelmingly to join the United Auto Workers. It's the first successful organizing drive in the South at a foreign-owned automaking plant. And more change could be on the way, with auto workers at other foreign-owned plants also pushing to unionize. Here's ABC's Morgan Norwood.
Tonight, Volkswagen workers in Chattanooga, Tennessee, celebrating a seismic victory.
The people have spoken.
More than 2,600 employees there voting to join the United Auto Workers Union, representing more than 70% of ballots cast.
It's the greatest feeling that I felt like in 13 years.
It will be the first foreign-owned automaking plant in the South, whose workers are represented by the UAW. This comes after 2 prior failed attempts and political pressure from 6 Republican Southern governors, including Tennessee's Bill Lee. In a statement, the governors had urged workers to vote no, saying unionization would certainly put our state's jobs in jeopardy.
What changed the most is everybody started seeing what we could get when the Big 3 went on strike. And they said, wait, hold on. If they can get all this, we should too.
UAW members launching a series of strikes against the Big 3 automakers last year, resulting in big wins for workers. President Biden, who joined picketers in Michigan last September, saying in a new statement, there is nothing to fear from American workers using their voice and their legal right to form a union if they so choose. Volkswagen thanking its workers for voting. Once the election is certified, Volkswagen and the UAW will head to the negotiating table. Employees hoping that a contract with better pay and benefits follows. And with the UAW president says this is just the beginning, Mercedes-Benz workers in Alabama are set to vote on UAW representation next month. With
Morgan Norwood, our thanks to you. There's still much more ahead on World News Tonight this Saturday. The viral images of people handling those 2 bear cubs in North Carolina. What authorities have decided about charges now. And tensions on the rise on campus over the Israel-Hamas war. Stay with us. Next tonight, tensions flaring on university campuses over the Israel-Hamas war. Protesters returning to Columbia University here in New York days after more than 100 students were arrested. And USC announcing it is redesigning its commencement program and canceling all speakers after earlier canceling its valedictorian's address over what it called security concerns. Now, an update to a story that we've been following here. Wildlife officials in North Carolina say no charges will be filed against the people who pulled 2 bear cubs out of a tree. You can see it here in the video. Apparently, they did this to take selfies with them. Officials calling the incident dangerous and unfortunate, but it appeared to be isolated. One of the bear cubs is still missing. The other was found and taken to a rehab facility in poor condition. When we come back, Taylor Swift's new album hasn't even been out 48 hours. A rundown of the records she's already broken. To the index now, and Taylor Swift just keeps on breaking records. For her new album, The Tortured Poets Department, the first album in Spotify history to have more than 300,000 streams in a single day. Fortnite, the most streamed song in a single day, and she broke her previous record for most streamed artist in just one day. Well, drama on the mats today. The Women's Collegiate Gymnastics National Championship going down to the wire. Just before we came on the air, LSU taking the crown right here on ABC, winning their first title ever after coming close on several occasions. The Tigers had the highest qualifying score in the semifinals. Tonight, Messi, the TSA K9, is enjoying his retirement. The 8-year-old lab, the longest working explosives detection dog at Reagan National Airport, finishing his final shift. And then a surprise here, showered with dozens of tennis balls, of course, his favorite toy. Messi's Do Not Pet patch was removed, signaling his official retirement, which he will live out with his handler. And we thank Messi for all of his years of service. When we come back tonight, the 20-year-old and his personal mission to honor the remaining veterans of World War II. Finally tonight, America Strong, one young man in his quest to honor the greatest generation.
20-year-old Tyler Boland of Reading, Pennsylvania is on a mission to interview as many World War II veterans as possible.
I just think it's really important to remember what these guys did.
It all began 5 years ago when Tyler met this World War II vet who fought at Normandy Beach. Since then, he's met so many, he's lost count.
My goal was 100, but I passed that, and I was like, well, there's no point stopping. I'm ready.
Okay, I'm Quentin Stambaugh.
Quentin Stambaugh was a gunner on a plane who says he saw the mushroom cloud over Hiroshima while flying nearby.
Getting a picture of an old man. He used to be a young kid, you know.
There's 98-year-old George Ivanov, who fought along with Tyler's great-grandfather and earned 2 Purple Hearts. Ben Berry was part of a unit of black servicemen fighting at the Battle of the Bulge. And 100-year-old Paul Lilienthal, who flew combat missions all over Europe.
These guys were exactly how old I was. We were just kids, and they saved the world. That's so cool.
Tyler making long-term connections and deep friendships, celebrating birthdays, taking veterans to baseball games, even a Super Bowl, and driving them around in a World War II-era Jeep that he restored.
I had 100 different grandpas. Did you hear?
Tyler hoping to document their stories, preserve history, reminding us all of their extraordinary sacrifice.
They are very humble, and they don't make a big deal out of it. They just said, we did our job. We were called to the line of duty. That's what we had to do. I'm just a kid with a camera. The hero of this story is the veterans, not me.
Heroes indeed. Incredible stories. I'm Wade Johnson in New York. Good night.
Thank you for making World News Tonight with David Moore, America's most watched newscast. Tonight, the major foreign aid bills just passed by the House after months of fiery debate. Raucous moments on the House floor as the House passes billions in aid for Israel and, most controversially, Ukraine. That vote splitting the Republican Party. Now, the fallout. Will some Republicans try to force out their Speaker, Mike Johnson?
The honorable way for him to leave right now is to announce his resignation.
The House also passing a bill that could ban TikTok if it's not sold off by its Chinese parent company. The new timeline for action and what it means for fans of the hugely popular social media app. Protests spreading at colleges nationwide over Israel's war in Gaza. New tent villages popping up on campuses. And a huge protest late today. New Botox warning. More patients ending up in the hospital after being injected with fake Botox. Investigators now searching for the source. Country music superstar Morgan Wallen speaking out after being charged by police for allegedly throwing a chair off a rooftop bar. What he's saying now. And outrage over this video showing people pulling bear cubs from a tree seemingly for a selfie. Will wildlife officials charge them?
You actually confronted these people. Yes.
This is NBC Nightly News with Jose Diaz-Balart.
Good evening. It was a dramatic day on Capitol Hill with huge implications for the wars in Ukraine and Gaza, but also for the nearly 200 million American users of the social media app TikTok. This is the moment $60 billion in aid was approved for Ukraine. It came despite fierce opposition from a majority of Republicans, but today 100 Republicans joined every Democrat to approve the aid package. It only came up for a vote because the Republican Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, changed his own position on supporting aid. And that decision could possibly cost him his job. Already 3 members of his own party are vowing to force him out. We're also tracking the fallout for TikTok, which now has a deadline for its Chinese parent company to sell it, or one of the most popular apps in the U.S. will be banned. We'll get to that part of the story in a moment, but we begin with Julie Sirkin and the high drama on Capitol Hill.
The time for choosing is here.
Today, the House quickly passed a series of crucial funding bills that could now lead to a high-stakes showdown over Mike Johnson's future as Speaker.
Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no.
In a rare Saturday session, representatives voting on several measures, including 4 key bills. One, to send $60 billion to war-torn Ukraine in its fight against Russia. $26 billion for Israel in its war against Hamas, with billions more for humanitarian needs in Gaza.
The bill is passed.
And $8 billion to Taiwan.
The bill is passed.
Also a bill that would force the Chinese company that owns TikTok to sell the popular app or face a ban in the U.S. Each vote passing with a strong bipartisan mix of Democrats and Republicans. In an about-face, Johnson supporting aid to Ukraine after he flew to Mar-a-Lago to seek the former president's blessing last week.
The House has worked its will. We have a responsibility to stand with our Democratic allies throughout the world.
Notably absent from the bills, anything to address the southern border, once a red line for Republicans.
When we had members of Congress in there waving the Ukrainian flag while we're doing nothing to secure our border, I think every American in this country should be furious.
Now, House Speaker Mike Johnson is facing the biggest threat to his job yet, with at least 3 GOP hardliners putting pressure on him to resign. Pressure that is only growing after Democrats carried Johnson's agenda over the finish line. Will you commit to bringing a motion to vacate on the floor if Speaker Johnson doesn't resign?
I'm pretty sure one will come to the floor if he doesn't resign.
But Johnson says he's not going anywhere.
I don't walk around this building being worried about a motion to vacate. I have to do my job.
Julie, as we wait to see what happens to Speaker Johnson, what are the next steps for these 4 bills the House passed today?
Well, the Senate will take up all the bills in one package as early as Tuesday. It'll likely pass, and President Biden said he'll sign it. Jose?
Julie Sirkin on Capitol Hill, thank you. And now to the future of TikTok. The House passed a bill that could mean the end of a massively popular social media app with nearly 200 million users across the country. Aaron Gilchrist now on what happens next.
The clock may be ticking on TikTok, with the House passing a bill Saturday afternoon to force the app's Chinese parent company to sell the platform. The measure would give ByteDance 9 months to do that and allow the president to extend that deadline by another 90 days. If it isn't sold by then, TikTok could be banned in the U.S.
Say TikTok!
TikTok has some 170 million active users in the U.S., some of whom have long railed against the possibility of a shutdown of the app.
Call them and tell them to stop the ban.
But this new move in the House looks to have enough support in the Senate that it will reach the president's desk. President Biden was asked about a ban last month.
If you still support banning TikTok, would you sign that bill?
If they pass it, I'll sign it.
The Biden administration has said the app represents a national security threat, with the owners having close ties to the Chinese government, claims that its CEO has repeatedly denied. TikTok has been banned on federal government devices, but...
Trump or Biden?
You kidding?
The Biden presidential campaign has an active account, a space to interact with younger potential voters.
What would be the effect of a ban? How would it impact people?
So this is totally uncharted territory in the U.S. You wouldn't be able to update or distribute the app.
TikTok releasing a statement to NBC News repeating its criticism of a bill that, quote, would trample the free speech rights of 170 million Americans, devastate 7 million businesses, and shutter a platform that contributes $24 billion to the U.S. economy annually.
A TikTok ban would absolutely affect the millions of Americans that use TikTok to kill time, to watch dance videos. But the real hard part here would be for the people who are making those videos, the people who earn their income by either sponsored or ad content.
Aaron is traveling with the president in Wilmington, Delaware. Aaron, what's the timeline once the president signs this bill?
Well, the timeline here, Jose, means that TikTok could go away around this time next year, which also means that President Biden or potentially President Trump could have to deal with any fallout. Jose?
Aaron Gilchrist, thank you. Join Kristen Welker for Meet the Press tomorrow morning for much more on this, including her exclusive one-on-one with Ukraine's President Zelensky. Protests are expanding to college campuses around the country over Israel's war in Gaza, and heightened tensions at Columbia University tonight, just days after police were called in to clear out a protest encampment on campus. George Solis is there.
In New York City, just outside the gates of Columbia University. Massive protests filling the streets. Pro-Palestinian demonstrations appearing to grow on this fourth day since students set up an encampment on campus that led police in riot gear to make more than 100 arrests at the request of the university president earlier this week.
Students tell us despite the risk of suspension, having their ID badges turned off, and losing access to housing here on campus, they've reestablished this encampment demanding the university divest from Israel.
I was one of the students arrested, suspended by the university. All of these students know the risk, and they're showing up because they understand that in our numbers we have greater safety.
For some, the ongoing protests have led to discomfort even being on campus.
They feel the campus is so toxic, it's so unwelcoming to Jewish students and people who diverge from this line.
And demonstrations are now spreading. Overnight, hundreds of Yale students camped outside a dinner for the university president to protest the school's investment in military weapon manufacturers. At UNC Chapel Hill, students set up their own encampment in solidarity with the Columbia students who were arrested this week. All as a national pro-Palestinian student group is calling for action on campuses nationwide. Universities have a long history of political demonstration, Columbia famously seeing buildings overtaken in 1968 by anti-Vietnam War demonstrators.
Revolution!
Tonight's protest on campus and out in the streets, once again making their stance known on a war raging overseas.
It's been 6 months and these protests have only been getting bigger, and it says so much about the hope of this movement. And George Solis joins us now from outside Columbia University. George, what is the police presence there like tonight?
Yeah, Jose, there's a large police presence here on the periphery of the campus. You can see it right behind me where protests are still growing strong at this hour. What's unclear tonight is if police are going to go back on campus to disperse the groups of students gathered there tonight. Jose?
George Solis in New York, thank you. Today marks a somber milestone. 25 years since Columbine, one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history. Last night, a vigil in Denver to honor the 12 students and one teacher killed that day. But it was also a reminder of how that day changed the conversation about school safety. Rahima Ellis reports.
On April 20th, 1999, the mass shooting at Columbine High School shocked the nation.
It's happened again. A mass shooting at an American school.
12 students and one teacher killed. And the belief that children were safe inside school walls.
There was gunshots and we all got down and we crawled out.
Forever shattered.
Any keys you have in your pocket for those out?
In the months that followed Columbine, school administrators made drastic changes.
At every entrance, armed guards, metal detectors, surveillance cameras, and two-way radios.
Here, here's the door. Back out of the room. Hands in your head.
Schools became training grounds for police, many of which had never been inside their schools.
Cops across the country are training in schools this summer. They need to know the layout of those schools.
That summer, NBC profiled something unheard of to most Americans then, an active shooter drill.
This is a drill. The blood and wounds are not real, but the threat to American schools is genuine. And now education experts say getting ready for class means getting ready for terrible violence.
A student graduating this spring likely has participated in these drills every single year, starting in kindergarten. Researchers are still grappling with their impact.
They're really scary. It decreases the sense of safety.
Studies show following the drills a 39% increase in depression and a 42% increase in stress and anxiety. In the wake of Columbine, metal detector companies were overwhelmed with orders.
We expect between now and the beginning of school next year to be a very busy period for us.
While more research is needed, experts say there is little evidence these measures alone make schools safer. In fact, since Columbine, we've had 404 school shootings, something that's become a fact of life for students today.
Every day I wake up scared. I want to go to school and just get my education.
Experts say for all the security at schools, we're still not doing enough to identify threats before it's too late. Has there been a culture shift in this country around school safety since Columbine?
We have learned so much about how we can identify kids who are at risk and how to support them to figure out exactly who does actually pose a threat and to address that.
Rahima Ellis, NBC News.
Coming up, the new health warning about fake Botox. More people now hospitalized. And the video shocking animal lovers across the country. So what happened to the people who try to take selfies with bear cubs? What's ahead? We're back with an urgent warning about fake Botox after some patients ended up in the hospital. Officials now sounding the alarm about fake versions of the drug and the people who inject it. Here's Adrian Broaddus with what you need to know.
Tonight, new warnings as New York City is now reporting 3 cases of botulism-like illnesses linked to potentially counterfeit Botox injections. The city's health department saying all 3 patients went to emergency departments. 1 person admitted to the intensive care unit.
Okay, here we go.
Botox is approved by the FDA, but it's also made from the same toxin that causes botulism. When administered correctly, it comes with little risk, says Dr. Pooja Soda.
How many people receive Botox treatments every year?
We're talking about millions upon millions.
But now, the CDC reports 22 women in 11 states have had bad reactions after receiving a counterfeit version of the popular treatment. Half of them sent to the hospital. Symptoms in these cases include slurred speech, droopy eyelids, difficulty breathing, swallowing, and raising arms. The symptoms appeared within days or weeks of getting the shot. In all of these cases, the injections were administered in non-healthcare settings. Unclear at this point is if the cases of illness all stem from one bad batch or if multiple versions of fake Botox are to blame.
This is still at its heart a medical procedure and needs to be really cared for in that way.
The CDC says when receiving Botox injections, make sure the provider is licensed.
This is again about having that good relationship with your provider and feeling comfortable to say, hey, can I take a look? Can you talk me through what the product is going to be?
And experts say check the label on the box. It should be written in English. And remember, if the price is too good to be true, it's a potential risk to your health. Jose?
Adrian Broadus, thank you so much. Still to come, the growing outrage over this bear cub close encounter. Also, people could take selfies with them. Country superstar Morgan Wallen speaking out following his arrest in Nashville earlier this month. He was charged with reckless endangerment for allegedly throwing a chair off the roof of a bar. There you see it on this earth cam on the right, crashing to the ground. Last night, he released this statement, reading in part, "Not proud of my behavior, and I accept responsibility." And now to a wildlife controversy and the outrage after a group of people got caught on camera pulling bear cubs out of a tree simply to take selfies with them. Maggie Vespa reports.
Should we go to the office? I don't know what to do. Oh, I don't know.
Caught on camera, a group going to unbearable lengths.
She's holding the bear.
The other guy's grabbing the other one. Seemingly for photos with frightened cubs.
That's 100% what she's doing. She's taking pictures. Oh,
yeah. But tonight, officials say no criminal charges against these Asheville residents who pulled 2 baby black bears from trees near their apartment complex Tuesday as furious neighbors recorded it all.
Did she just drop it? Oh my gosh, it's running, the poor little thing. Poor thing.
Put it back! You actually confronted these people.
Yes.
Ashley Hobbs from North Carolina's Bear Wise program says she was dispatched by the local sheriff. What were these people thinking?
So what they told me was that they were trying to help the cub. Now in the video that we saw, that's not apparent to me. I just described the dangers, how irresponsible it was.
Hobbs says her team took 1 cub, a female, to a rehab center. The other cub and the bear's mother were nowhere to be found. Hobbs says because the interaction was brief and the group released both cubs, no charges apply. Is there any sentiment of like, unfortunately we can't charge these people based on statutes?
Definitely. We would have loved to, again, make this a teaching moment and really taken it seriously.
It's just the latest example of people getting recklessly close to nature. Like this woman nearly charged by a bison while posing for a photo at Yellowstone National Park last year. And tonight, the search continues for vandals who last week destroyed ancient rock formations at Nevada's Lake Mead National Recreation Area. Authorities say they could face felony charges. Back in North Carolina, Hobbs says the cub is unharmed.
No. That's insane.
Officials plan to release her back into the wild, hoping humans keep their distance.
Poor thing. Put it back.
Maggie Vespa, NBC News.
When we come back, there's good news tonight about the basketball surprise that had this star player in tears. There's good news tonight. So often the good news doesn't get as much attention as the bad. So every Saturday we highlight the many people who spread joy and love. And these are just some of those stories this week. When Michaela Nolan finished her first Boston Marathon this week, there was a big surprise. Her grandpa Bill was waiting. He'd come from Florida, watching her run to honor his late wife Anne, the grandma who'd always supported Michaela's marathon dreams.
I think she would have just said that she was so proud and so happy for me for achieving this goal.
And to talk about a victory lap, that's Texas high school track coach Joe McKinney. And that line of people with him, they're generations of his former students celebrating his upcoming retirement after 34 years. There's a new chapter ahead, too, for Michigan Police Chief Scott Burns.
I'd like to recognize your devotion to this community and your dedication to this police department.
He broke down in tears during the traditional last call, his final day on the force. It's so meaningful because the person talking was his wife, Lisa, a 911 dispatcher. They've been working together 24 years.
You've had a long, distinguished career, and I'm honored and so proud to be your wife. I can't wait to see what the future holds.
100 copies. Thank you. Excited.
Kingston, Jamaica.
And at Westchester University in Pennsylvania, the team helped make forward Jordan Kellier's hoop dream come true, flying in his parents from Jamaica, their first time ever watching him play. The surprise set up by head coach Damian Blair. Tell me how those moments were for you, Jordan.
It was unreal. I've never once thought in my life see my dad in America, and this was the first time watching him play.
Coach, would you say that in some ways Jordan's taught you a number of life lessons as well?
Yes, Yes, he has. I mean, he's been here for over 7 years without his family, and it's taught me that, when things are rough, I need to push through and stay positive and continue to work hard. So appreciate you for that, and I love you, brother. Love you too.
That's NBC Nightly News for this Saturday. Hallie Jackson will be here tomorrow night. I'm Jose Diaz-Balart. Thank you for the privilege of your time. Good night.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news.
Thank you for watching and privilege of your time. This is Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir. Good man. Have a good life.